Hi, everyone. This is Hal Krosman with Screenwriting U. And today we're going to be talking about how to create a horror franchise. Of all the genres, this is the one that has had the most success for new writers creating a franchise. If you look at some of the movies, like Saw, for instance, came from a couple of guys down in Australia we'd never seen anything they'd ever done. Alien came from two guys, one of who was sleeping on the couch of the other's house in order to survive during that period of time. Quiet Place came from a couple of guys who I think were from the East Coast or Midwest. Uh, and it's like nobody heard of any of these people until they had that first horror movie made. And in each case, it turned into a franchise. So it is worth really, truly looking at this. Today, what we're going to do is we'll talk first about what causes a franchise. From there, we'll talk about what doesn't cause a franchise. And I'm talking about having to do with writing and those kinds of things. And then we'll talk about the horror franchise model that actually will give you 6 ways to increase the chance that your horror movie can be a franchise. And finally, we'll discuss the upcoming class, writing terrifying horror scripts for those of you who really want to write a truly professional horror screenplay. So let's jump into this. What causes a franchise? Inside the industry, we're talking from the industry perspective, it happens for business reasons. So the first movie was a big financial success, right? Box office is 10 times the budget or more, so they know that it's worth going to the next stage. Let me give you an example here. Megan, and you may have seen this movie, it came out last year, but it was interesting. The budget was 12 million, the box office was 172 million. Within a week, this showed up. Megan had already been set for sequel for 2025. So they should be shooting it either now or very soon. But that happened, that decision was made within a week after the movie came out. And the reason why was because it was clear it was a runaway hit. That's what you need. That's what you're looking for. So in order to get that, there needs to be high demand from audiences, right? Insane buzz on social media, speculation about a sequel, lead characters that often become stars. If you remember the movie Halloween, Jamie Lee Curtis, uh, you know, she hadn't had any success as an actress up to that point. That put her on the map. And 50 years later, she's still starring in things because of it. Sigourney Weaver, she had done a couple of things, but had no real success to speak of until Alien. Alien took her to this whole other level, and from that point on, she's been a star. So all of these together point to a franchise. Now, what's not a franchise? Because this is kind of important. I see these things about once a month. Somebody will take 3 acts and they will expand them into 3 scripts in order to have a franchise. And they'll tell me, a lot of times they'll say to me, yeah, this is unique because the whole first movie is the first act. And it's like, no, it's not unique. It's been done a lot of times by people who haven't sold movies. This other thing is they'll add a whole bunch more details and have the whole the sequel be just backstory, those kinds of things. And it's like, every once in a while that works, backstory in that situation. It worked with Godfather 2 pretty well. But there are a lot of times where that isn't where you need to go. The other possibility is to take a 3 or 4 or 500-page book, divide it into 300-page scripts, and present that. And it's like, very likely the entire book is the first movie, and it's time to write your second book as the sequel, maybe. which is another thing to consider is if you have a series that is incredible and fits the whole model I'm about to present, you might be in business there. Now, great news. From a writing perspective, there are 6 specific decisions that increase your chance of having a franchise. And so it really pay close attention to these because any of them that you violate will keep you from having what you want. So it's pretty important. So here's the horror franchise model. Number 1, high concept. And what this means is you have a big hook to your movie. There is something absolutely unique that will surprise people, that will have them, just because they heard that hook, have them want to come and see this movie. So this does 2 things. One is it makes it easy to pitch to producers. But the second thing is it makes it easy for people to tell their friends about the movie when they're buzzing about it. Here's The Purge. What if for a 12-hour period, anyone could get away with any crime, including murder? The moment I heard that, I was in a producer's office. This movie had not come out. They hadn't gone into production yet. He said that was what they were working on next. And as soon as he told me that, I just went, oh my God, that's a franchise. And he goes, it absolutely will be. And it's like, yeah, because you've got, this is a situation that we had never seen up until that point. It's unique. It creates all kinds of possible conflict. It's pretty amazing. That's what a high concept will do. Alien was pitched as Jaws inside a spaceship. And at the time, Jaws was a pretty big and successful movie, but also, if you can imagine being trapped inside a spaceship and having that thing come after you, not good. Saw, it was pitched through the deadly puzzles that force the victim either to maim themselves or kill another to survive. It's like, okay, what we know right off the bat, if we're talking franchise, is they can keep coming up with more deadly puzzles every time one of their movies come out. And then It Follows. You may not have seen this one, but it actually did have a sequel. A supernatural entity that acts as a sexually transmitted disease. So that the monster essentially traveled through people, and the way they got rid of it was to have sex with somebody else, which then gave that person, the monster, the disease. You know what? It was actually, I'm not going to say wonderful things about it, but I will say it was a pretty good concept when you think about nobody had done horror as a sexually transmitted disease up till that point. So you need a great title. And this is important. Your title should be 1 to 3 words. It points to the concept, and it can easily be pitched on social media, right? It's like, and we'll look at some here real fast. Let's do that. The Purge, I mean, just the word The Purge means you're getting rid of something. You're vomiting it out. You're trying to kill this thing off, whatever it is. Friday the 13th, a well-known superstition for bad luck. When I created this class, I was working with Sean Cunningham, the producer of Friday the 13th. And I asked him at that point in front of an audience, I said, let me just ask you, Sean, what percentage of your success do you think came from that title? And he sat there and he thought about it for 30 seconds. It was like, it was the longest suspense I've ever felt when I was doing an interview. And then he goes, you know, I think most of it. And it's like that title had never been used in a horror movie before that. It was the perfect title, as you can tell. It created a franchise. Obviously, along the way, they got better and better at what they were doing. But, you know, congratulations on finding a great title and then creating a movie to fit that, because that's how it came about. He came up with the title first, and then from there, then he said, what would be the movie that would fit that title? And that's what they created. Halloween, another great title, right? It's a holiday, right? But it follows the Devil's Night. And, it's the thing. We've been trick-or-treating forever. We just turned Halloween into one of the worst experiences we could imagine. And then, of course, Alien, which just went right to the heart of the matter. I can't remember there was another title. I talked with the writer of this, and he had another title that was like, okay, but it wasn't great. And this one just got right to the point. There wasn't a movie titled Alien before that. And it was like, yeah, it gets to the essence of the primal fear in that situation. So, and then this guy. Number 3, you need a unique villain or monster. And I don't know about you guys, but this guy scared the shit out of me. After that, I could never be around a kid's doll again. And I had 3 daughters at the point. So the question is, who would be the scariest and most unique villain or monster for this story, for this concept, right? And this is something that you don't want to skimp on. I've seen lots and lots of scripts where the writer was good, but they had a villain or a monster that looked pretty much like everyone else. They had something that we had seen multiple times before that, or some version of it we had seen. If you're going to go to a doll, it can't be Chucky again. You'd have to have something else going on with it. But I'd be looking for what would be the scariest and the most unique. What would be a monster that would surprise us, would be different, that people would talk about. From there, let's go to some of these. The Jigsaw Killer. Okay, in this case, we didn't see him. I think he was on the floor the whole time. But he's this guy who creates these morbid puzzles that require people to either hurt themselves or to kill another to survive, right? That was a monster we hadn't seen. Yes, it was a normal human being, if you're going to call that normal, but it was what he did that made him the monster. The Purge did something we hadn't seen before. It made every human that you see a possible murderer. Wow, that would be weird. A Nightmare on Elm Street gave us Freddy, right? And this guy was a former child killer who comes back and terrorizes kids in their dreams and actually kills teenagers in their dreams. That was new and unique at that point. So, and then Child's Play, of course, Chucky. We don't have to say any more about him because he terrorized me. So number 4, then, you want a unique form of terrorizing characters. And this is going to be pretty important because essentially it's what audiences come there for. I want to pause just for a second here and talk just a little bit about the horror audience. There are a lot of people who write dramas with horror elements. I'm going to say, having talked with the horror producers that I know, having talked with other people in the industry, those are really, really hard to sell. And this is why. I was talking with one horror producer and I asked him on that. I said, dramas with horror elements, what do you think? And he goes, if you're going to write a horror movie. He goes, your problem is the people who are die-hard horror fans are going to go see your movie and they're going to hate it because it's not really horror. It's a drama. And they're not looking for that. They're looking for terrorized characters. They're looking for a real, true horror movie. So you want to, if you haven't done it, you want to start embracing this kind of thinking. So the solution is, again, brainstorm 20 different ways to terrorize your characters that fit your concept. Be thinking about that. imagine when you're writing this, imagine somebody who is the most hardcore horror fan, who has been to every horror movie and is looking for something that will take them into that emotion that they crave. In the beginning, I didn't understand this. I kept thinking, well, you know, at that point, I didn't like going to horror movies early on because they scared me. And then I started talking to some of the big horror fans, and what I found out was they love that emotion. They love being scared. They love being terrorized. Uh, it's like when people go to a rom-com, you go in because you want to experience falling in love again. These people go to horror movies because they want to be terrorized. They want to have that experience while watching that movie. So that's our job. Saw forced us to face these deadly dilemmas. That was pretty scary. The Purge, you're playing a game of mass murder on the streets. Nightmare on Elm Street, terrorizing and killing teenagers in their dreams, right? We're going after these characters. So, and then number 5, then it's about scary as hell horror situations that promote the franchise. Now, the easiest advice I'd give you on this is use our scary as hell horror model. We have a model specifically for writing scenes that takes people from this emotion over here all the way up to this one over here. And it's designed to have you connect with have the audience be connected to the characters and feel what they're feeling at the beginning, and then they just go on this roller coaster ride. So the solution, again, scary as hell scenes. We're talking visually scary. They're sequenced to escalate the horror emotions. They essentially represent the entire horror movie in a single scene. And they deliver on all the horror conventions. So if you're great at writing those, usually you'll have 5 of them plus or minus inside a script. You may have as many as 8, but those scenes are going to become the most important scenes of your movie. So it is really worth thinking about how to make them truly scary as hell. Here's a couple of those. And I've actually done an analysis on this that you could see at some point. But Saw, the Amanda reverse bear trap scene was one of them. Saw actually had quite a few scary as hell scenes, but this one was designed incredibly well. And then The Exorcist did a really good job on the exorcism scene. Both of these ended up appearing in trailers for the movies. They gave us just enough fright so that people went, oh my God, I've got to go check that out. Uh, so, and then finally, number 6, you escalate the story and the horror in every sequel. So if you're in that situation where the producer decides to option or buy your script, at some point, if you're talking horror, they may come back to you and say, what else do you have? Do you have a sequel to this? And that's your chance to pitch that, the other ideas. Usually we don't pitch those up front because it's easy if a producer wants to say no to the second one, they may say no to the first one. What you want to do is get your deal and then move into the second pitch. So in order to do that, you probably need to discover something new. Your job is to take it to a new level, right? Discover something new, like why the Jigsaw killer is creating these puzzles. What's his purpose? What's that about? The violence might be taken to a new level. The Purge, when they went to the second one, it was like warfare. People were out there in tanks and, with all kinds of weapons, and they were teamed together and working together like a troop. It might be a new expression of the horror. You might take that to a new level. So if you want to be great at horror, a couple of things you need to know. First, learn the key skills that you don't have right now. And I'll talk about those in a couple of minutes here, just so you can see some of them and look and see. And it's not a thing of, are you okay at these skills? The question is, how good are you? You need to be, if we're talking about the main horror skills, you need to be great and you need to create something that's exceptional. And by the way, if you just know how to do it, you can do it, right? You're a creative person. You've created lots of stuff so far. If you've even written one script, you can do this. And then you want to brainstorm great horror ideas, situations, scenes, and pitches. On these, a lot of times people will go with the first thing that pops into their mind. That's okay if you're writing a first draft, but somewhere along the way, I would suggest you go back to those main horror scenes, back to who your monster is, back to the things that will create a franchise, and you re-brainstorm them and you take them to a higher level. We've got tools for doing all of that. If you're not really spectacular at brainstorming, we can give you tools that'll make you spectacular inside this genre. And then you want to just master the highest level horror model. Because if you came in with a horror model that was, say, 20 years ago, you're going to be writing at a different level than if you came in with today's horror model. So things have changed quite a bit. This has been an evolving genre. It really started back in the, in the 70s. Yes, there were things before that, but I mean, it started to become an American thing in the 70s. And after that, it's continually evolved. Every 10 years, it's gone up even more. So you want to be connected to and operating and writing out of the highest level horror model there is. So let me show you some of the skills. I'll walk you through those as we talk about the upcoming class, just so you can see them and see if there's anything that might be missing for you, or if there are any that you look at and you go, wow, I would really love to be great at that. So this is a class that, again, I designed while I was working with the producer of Friday the 13th. And throughout that, as I was interacting with him, as we were talking, he shared so many insights. So it starts with the concept and conventions. Remember, the concept is going to be the basic pitch, the short pitch that will be done in like 15-second Instagram spots. That will be the thing that actually sells your movie often. So you got to get that right. The conventions, now what we're talking about are what are the key things that every horror fan that goes to watch your movie is going to expect. You have to deliver on those if you hope to get a producer. So from there, then it's about the monster and the primal fears. And we put these two together on purpose. You need an amazing monster that is unique, that scares the hell out of us. And the easiest way to get that is to have it point to one of the primal fears as the problem. So we'll give you both of those. We'll give you an exact model for creating amazing monsters and a list of the primal fears that you can use to brainstorm. From there, you'll go to your survivors and victims. The characters in these movies pretty much break down into these two roles. And then we're going into building the plot. Now, let me show you, we do something really unique when it comes to our plot. And the reason why when it comes to horror is because, again, it's an audience that if they love your horror movie, they're going to tell everybody to watch it. But they're expecting a lot. What they're not wanting is a drama with horror elements. So we're going to build our plot through 4 lessons. The first one is the horror situation track. You're going to essentially lay out an outline, and then you're going to go, okay, what's the opening scene? That's the opening horror scene. Then what's the horror scene at the end of the first act? What's the horror scene at the midpoint? What's the horror scene at the end of Act 2, turning point? Right? Then what's the big horror that's going to happen in the very end when you get to that third act? And you will brainstorm and lay those out so that you've got them all the way across your script, just thinking about horror situations. From there, then we're going to go to the character death track. And at this point, you'll look at your characters and you'll ask, who's going to die? When are they going to die? And why are they dying? Even if that third one, even if the audience never knows, it still will influence how you write that character. So it is a worthwhile thing to do. So even if you only have a couple of characters that die along the way, having them be presented at the right time and having it come to a conclusion at the right time can make a big difference in the quality of your script. It also can set it up so that we're like deeply engaged with some characters, and then suddenly we have this tragic moment that is part of the story, right? So then your monster reveal track. How much of the monster do we see? When? That's your question here. So if you think, like, for instance, A Quiet Time, in the opening scene when the kid gets killed at the bridge, we hardly even see that monster. It's a blur. It just flies across. We mainly hear the noise. And, however, when we get all the way to the baby scene, almost at the end, now we have the monster tiptoeing around looking for the wife who is about to have this child. And it's in both cases, it does the job we need it to do. So it's important that you consider all the different ways you could reveal the monster and when and how, and you make the best decision. From there, then it's the character journey track. Now, I had somebody say to me at one point, in horror movies, characters don't have journeys. Now, that might have been true back in the 1960s. 50s or some of the others. But I'm going to tell you, I believe characters have journeys in horror movies. Like if you look at Scream, for instance, opening scene of Scream, we've got Drew Barrymore. She's the biggest star in the movie, and we watch her journey, even though it lasts only one scene. Drew Barrymore starts, she gets this phone call from this guy. It's a wrong number. He calls back, starts flirting with her. She's flirting back. They're laughing and talking back and forth. He asks her to do a horror trivia test. And they start doing that. And then he starts to be a little hostile and she hangs up, right? So now she's thinking, wow, that was bad. She doesn't want to do that again. He calls back and now he's coming in, or he turns out he can see her and she freaks out a little bit. And then he's in the house and then he chases her out and now she sees her dead boyfriend over there and it's the last thing she sees. She has a journey. She goes through a series of experiences there that fit the end of her life. That's her journey. And it didn't just have a character pop on the screen and get killed. We got connected to her. We believed that she was going to be the big character of this movie. We were actually shocked the moment that she died, because who would kill off the biggest star in the movie on the first scene? But then that gave us this message. Anybody, anywhere could die anytime. So worth knowing how to do these things. From there, I'm going to give you 3 different lessons that are just on emotions. And there's a reason why. In the horror world, you have all kinds of emotions that start with like apprehension. Somebody's like just concerned a little bit, and they go all the way to hysteria, where somebody's freaking out at the top of their lungs. They've lost control. They have no way to express themselves it further than just screaming. But your ability to move from one emotion to another, and finally to another is going to be key to your success. If you keep having the same sequence in every single horror scene, you are going to end up with stuff that feels predictable. And that's the one thing you don't want to happen. So what we did on this, it took us the longest of everything we ever created. With each one of these, like for instance, anguish. Do you know how to create anguish? Are you even clear on what it is? So what we do is we give you a definition of anguish in one sentence. So it's simple to the point, you know what it is. Then we give you the how to be able to create anguish at this moment in this scene. You will be able to flow from one emotion to another, to another, to another. And this is one of the keys to being able to write those scary as hell horror scenes, is being able to take us from an entry emotion all the way to one of these extreme emotions. In between, we'll give you 20 scares and creepy moments so that you keep it fresh. But when you get to this point, this model, this is probably the most amazing thing in this class. This model will change your life as a writer. You will see ways to write scenes that you never ever thought of. You will see ways to sequence emotions and to cause the audience to feel certain things on demand. And I'm talking multiple. Some of these scenes have 7 different emotions in them that the audience feels. This makes you a great horror writer. So from there, then it's about turning up the heat and how to keep it low budget if you'd like to, and marketable. There are some horror movies that aren't low budget. A Quiet Place, I think, was done for 17 to 20 million plus or minus. There are some of the others that were even more expensive, but for the most part, what you're looking to do is to make something that can sell and get you into that franchise territory. Now, this class begins, let's see, it begins on May 26th. That's a month from now. So I'm going to give you a special on it. The normal price is $129. The special on this is for the first 10 writers, is $129. So that'll save you $70. And in between now and then, you can start brainstorming what kind of horror ideas that you have. Bring in your favorite, the one that you think is the most interesting, the most compelling, and has the best chance of possibly selling. Because that one thing, if you've got a great horror idea, take it through this class and you will end up with a great horror script that really does have a chance of selling. This is worth doing. We've had multiple people who have made deals. We've had people who have gotten movies made because of this. This is absolutely worth learning and mastering. And as you go through it, you won't just learn this one genre, you also will become a significantly better writer. Imagine if you master all of this, what that does for anything else you write from now on. So come join us. All you got to do is go down here where it has this link, write this down, bit.ly, bit.ly/horror sign up. So it's horror sign up. No spaces, no capitals, no dashes, just bit.ly/horror sign up. Put that in your browser where you normally put a web address, click return, and master horror, because it will bring you so much more success as a writer. So looking forward to seeing you there. With that, this is Hal Croasmun wishing you the absolute best on your writing. Bye-bye, everyone.